All right, we're going.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started just out of respect for everyone's time. Hopefully we'll have a few more people coming on and joining us this evening. But just want to first thank you for being with us tonight. I know there's been a lot of SOPA-related webinars happening, particularly this week, but over the last few weeks. And we really just appreciate you taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about what we've got coming up this fall. And we're really excited to share some of this stuff with you. So just some general housekeeping. We will keep everyone muted. If you can please make sure you keep yourself muted, but we'll kind of try to control that on the back end as well if needed. You can type any of your questions into the Q&A box. So if you just find kind of the pop-up on your Zoom screen, it is typically at the bottom. There'll be a box that says Q&A. If you can type any questions that you have throughout the presentation into there, we will monitor that and then try to address as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation tonight. We are recording this, and it will be shared out along with the PowerPoint presentation to all of the managers and sport and competition coordinators tomorrow. It'll also get posted onto the SOPA website under the COVID-19 protocols page, which I will show you a little bit later. So we'll go, Mike, you're good, you can stay there. So just a little bit kind of what we'll talk about and go over tonight, really focusing on our at-home training and competition for our athletes. We'll go over a little bit of kind of what does virtual mean, what does it mean kind of to engage athletes virtually. I think there's just been a little bit confusion about some of the wording that we've used, so we're trying to just clean some of those things up on our end and want to make sure that you all have a good understanding of kind of what this is going to look like over the next few months. What the fall training options are. We're going to review and kind of dive into what are some of those different social media platforms that you can be using to help engage your athletes. Also going to hear, so a huge thanks to some of the coaches have offered to jump on and share their experiences with us tonight on how they've just kind of stayed connected and engaged with their athletes over these last few months. And then we'll get into what fall competitions will look like and what some future options kind of coming down the pipeline will be. So that's kind of what we will look to cover. Before we get started really diving into that stuff, Mike, you can go to the next slide. Wanted to share with you all, this was actually just shared with us yesterday. It was a survey that Special Olympics North America conducted. It was a COVID-19 athlete impact survey. And it was sent to all the programs, and we were asked to share it out with athletes from throughout the state. I think athletes maybe and volunteers throughout the state. But we had 28 athletes, or 2,800, about 2,800 athletes respond. And just really interesting findings. And I think, again, just really states how impactful we as an organization and all the work that you all do is. So just wanted to share some of this stuff with you. And I think this kind of quote here in the red is really powerful and impactful. So athletes who access Special Olympics resources and stay in contact with Special Olympics may be more likely to take preventative measures against COVID-19 and feel more confident in their ability to protect themselves. So again, just the fact that they're kind of part of this family, they're staying engaged, they're working with people, you're probably helping provide a lot of that education for them, you know, the importance of wearing face masks and hand washing and social distancing. But they listen, right? And it's just really important that we continue to kind of engage and have that level of interaction with our athletes during these times. You want to go to the next slide there? These were just some of the key findings and stats from the survey that was done. So just wanted to, again, kind of point some of these out and share them with you. So 76% of the athletes have stayed engaged, which is wonderful to hear, right? And they report that their Special Olympics relationships have helped reduce their sense of isolation and lead to greater use of those preventative measures. So the athletes themselves were the ones saying that. And again, I think this is extremely encouraging and just kind of reemphasizes the need during this time. And then it was interesting too that nearly a quarter of them reported not wearing masks or following those preventive measures. And again, I think it just goes back to, you know, that education and that really sounding board and just friend, doing some of those regular check-ins and just seeing how they're doing, how important that can be, and just what a extreme impact that that can have on some of the athletes' lives. It was very interesting too, and they say one of the most striking findings was in respect to the lack of basic needs. So the amount of athletes that reported food insecurities or housing insecurities during this time. So again, although we've been in this for about 6 months now, right? Important to continue having those conversations and just, reaching out to help. I know we're a great family and community. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are willing to offer help to some of those athletes in need. If you just want to go on to the next one, Mike. So I think just a few more stats here, and then again, I think some pretty impactful quotes, but 55% of athletes that have used Special Olympics resources during the pandemic, which again is great. So a lot of the things that you're providing, that we're providing, we kind of started that Commit to Fit series, just some of the virtual events that we've been doing, so people are utilizing and accessing those things. And 80% of the athletes who have been in contact with Special Olympics have used all 3 of those preventive measures. So again, I think good numbers, good statistics that they were able to pull together just on the impact that we can have. And I think this quote in red is something that you're already pretty aware of, but just Special Olympics plays a critical and positive role in the lives of our athletes. I think always, right? But particularly now as they try to navigate through this pandemic. So just wanted to take a little bit of time to share some of this with you, stress the importance of your role and the role that you can be playing in the lives of those athletes right now. So we will move into kind of the content, and I will pass it over to you, Bruce.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate that background information, very important. So what does it mean to be virtual? We're finding that more and more of our athletes, as well as our coaches, are not comfortable with returning to play at this time due to the COVID-19. Therefore, we must engage our athletes virtually. So in order to do this, there's a couple things that we can do. For instance, right now we're having a webinar. You can have conference calls, phone calls, text messagings, utilizing social media. We'll provide some of those examples a little later on. One thing that seems to be a little bit confusing is the word virtual. So virtual, as we're going to speak tonight, is specifically to at-home training, and we will be having virtual competitions. So for this fall, there'll be 2 training options, right? 2 weeks ago, we talked about the in-person training, what that is like to be training in person with a coach. Again, as a reminder that athletes that are training in person with a coach must be following the return to activities protocols that we outlined for you. All the score submissions, when you collect them at your practice, will be submitted by the coach. So for tonight and this presentation, we will be focused on the at-home training and virtual competitions. So the expectation is that athletes will train at home weekly, but they are required to be working with a coach. That coach will also need to be a Class A volunteer, which we will go over in a couple minutes here. The athletes, when they're at home training and it's time for them to submit their scores for competition, they will submit those scores to the coach. And the coach will then submit those scores to the sport comp director, and then the sport comp director will submit them through SOPA following the normal channels. We're anticipating and hoping that the athletes that are at home, that we will be able to provide them with the necessary equipment in order for them to successfully train at home as well as compete. So we'll go over some of those initiatives that we have in a couple slides. So for the athletes that are training at home and the coaches, we will not be requiring the 1-to-4 coach to athlete ratio for this fall. But we want to make sure that the coaches understand that it could be working with quite a few different athletes. So we're hoping that you are engaging your assistant coaches and your unified partners within this process. Additionally, because of coaching and COVID-19, we would not be requiring coaches to be certified this fall. But like I just mentioned, coaches will still must be a Class A volunteer. It is our hope that the coaches will continue to work as a team, that you will utilize your assistant coaches, that you'll continue to making practice plans. You'll be engaging our athletes virtually, many different ways that you can engage your assistant coaches. We want to make sure that you are still connecting with them. Your assistant coaches are still being engaged and part of your training, and still connecting with the athletes. As we talked about with the athlete requirements for in-person, the at-home training athletes will also be required to have their completed SOPA athlete application, which is their medical. So we will need to make sure that the athletes that are training both in person as well as at home are both whether they're in person or at home, that they do have an updated medical. So what does it look like when you're training at home? This just kind of gives you a quick glimpse of what your practice plan could look like. One thing that we really want to stress to all the coaches, even though you are training at home, it is supposed to be challenging to your athletes. We want to get their heart rate up. We want them to be tired and exhausted after practice, just the same that they would be training at in person. So just because they're training at home, they're not getting any time off, that we're really focusing on their skills, really focusing on skill development, focusing on the drills and skills that they will be doing at home, and talking about competition, training your athletes for competition at the end of the season. So again, these are some of the things that you can be doing within your practice and your training environment. I'm going to make sure that every training and practice that you are doing with your coaches, that you do a skill recap and you're following up with your athletes to make sure that they understand what they are doing, and they understand that there is some expectation that they are following through on these trainings, and you're preparing them weekly to get better every week and to prepare for competition. Part of every one of your training sessions, we want to make sure that there is some fitness work. Again, creating some drills and additional drills that you can be doing with your athletes to increase their heart rate, to make them sweat at practice. Again, really focusing on things that you would be doing in-person training. You can do the same things virtually with your athletes. So make sure that we are really focusing on their fitness level as well. Additionally, we want to make sure that you are incorporating some health education with your athletes as you normally would be doing at an in-person training. Talk to your athletes about hydration, talk to your athletes about nutrition and wellness. And then lastly, focus on your skill development, working with your athletes and giving them drills to work with, whether it's a week ahead of time or during your training session, or talking to your athletes about, this is what we're going to work on next week. Here's some skills that I want you to focus on this week, so when we come to practice next week, you are prepared and ready to go. Lastly, a lot of things, what we're hearing from some of the athletes is they really miss that socialization. They're really missing their teammates and their coaches and being connected with them. So, really most importantly is really connecting with your athletes and, allowing them to do some fun activities, some fun games at practice and part of your training. There's a lot of different fitness challenges that you can be doing with your athletes. You can do like a quick scavenger hunt. A lot of things that are, some of the things that are a big hit would be like the minute to win it type activities and challenges. This could also be good for some of your athlete-led activities. Again, keeping your athletes engaged, allowing your athletes to come up with some additional games and activities that they can be doing at practice, really helping them to stay engaged and connecting with their teammates. So right now I have the pleasure of introducing Melissa Brandt, who is an LDRW coach from Columbia Montour. She is a coach who is going to start training her athletes virtually. So I'd like to bring her on here just to talk about, some of the things that she's planning on doing with her athletes, how she's connecting with those athletes in this virtual world. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Melissa. You should be unmuted and be able to talk. Melissa?
All right,
There
now
you
can
go.
you hear me?
We
All
can
right,
hear you.
hi.
Good, thanks.
Hi, as Bruce said, Melissa Brandt, Columbia Montour, and I have had only 3 to 4 athletes per season. Many of our athletes in Columbia Montour do bocce, but I've already had a couple of athletes, 3 to be exact so far, who have contacted me. So I came up with a plan on how we could make it work in our 2 small counties here. I told our athletes if they wanted to get in touch with me, that I sent them my email. Well, I sent my email out to them, and I just need their first and last name, their age, their birth date, because I'm not in charge of that information because I'm not the manager. And then I focused on the walking events because the 2 athletes that contacted me were walkers. And I, first of all, told them they could do up to 3 events. They had to decide if they're walking or running this year, which they are walking, and that they can't do a combination. I told them that as soon as I get the okay, they can start training immediately. I wanted them to drink and stretch before every workout. I reminded them it's very hot out there and they need to stay hydrated. I provided them with a 2-week schedule for the 1,500 and the 3,000. And I started very low key, like day 1, you and your support worker, or if you're able to do it yourself, or your parent can go with you, go for a 15-minute walk. My first couple of weeks here are getting them in shape. Many of our athletes, I know just even my own daughter, she was afraid to go outside and run for the longest time. So I want them to get outside. I want them to be able to start walking, get comfortable being outside, and so forth. So I came up with a 2-week workout, and then if they want to put the 5,000 in there for on the 3rd week, I came up with a 5,000 meter walking workout. And the idea being they can start day 1 whenever they decide to do it. But if they follow that, by the end of the 7th day, they should be able to walk a 1,500 meter walk, and they could get a time. And if by the end of the week 2, they should be able to almost be able to do a 2-mile walk, and they could give me a 3,000 meter time. I'm not the greatest at technology. Bruce and I went back and forth a few times. I said, I'm going to try this. So I am very comfortable. One of the athletes' parents is at practice and has my cell phone number, and his daughter does too. So we're very comfortable talking back and forth via phone or text. My other athlete lives in Bloomsburg, so we are going to connect through email and talk basically that way. I plan on, with my own daughter, she runs year round, so I will do her workout just as I would be training her for, the 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 meter run. I have encouraged them to start drinking lots of fluid, and I'm hoping that they will have an adult or somebody to help them time their day of their event. I can easily socially distancing. I live 7 miles away from Bloomsburg. I can mark out a 15-meter walking course. Most of our athletes know if they start at the town fountain and they walk to the town park, it's almost 1,500, but I could even spray a line on the road so they know where their 15,000 meter mark is and their 3,000 meter mark. And that is about as far as I've gone with the planning. I just have figured the athletes expressed interest. Track season became kind of a bust. Only a few of our athletes did it. And I really want to try to make this work, but keep it simple and manageable.
Melissa, we had one question I'm just going to
Oh,
add. I think you just kind of you did alluded to it. The way you're going to manage. How will the athletes track how far they've been going? Are you plan on using an app, or are you just your athletes know the distances?
In all three cases, my athletes pretty much know
Mhm.
where they're going. They've been
Okay.
with me for many years. In other programs, I'm not sure exactly what's out there. I know my daughter and I have just a basic Garmin watch, and it will tell us exactly when we're at a mile or 2 miles, our timing for 15 minutes. All three girls that I'm talking about definitely can follow 15 minutes on a watch, and they will need help, though. I know I will have to say, you need to go find the track, do 3 3/4 lap, or start, here in town and walk to this point. So that's where communication will be key on making sure what day I know they're going to do their workout and say, okay, can you do this? I know it's not the best, but if we have bad weather or COVID gets very out of hand, they have access to treadmills, and
Yep.
they could walk on a treadmill. It's not the best, but they could get that workout in.
Yeah, that's good advice. You just mentioned the treadmill. So I know when Mike talks about competition, he'll talk a little bit more about treadmills and some of those alternative measures that we can take that we're going to be taking for the at-home athletes. So that's good information that you shared. Appreciate that. Um, so one of the things, and you just mentioned that you do a lot of talking with your athletes, whether it's through text messaging or through a phone conversation or emailing a parent. Um, so one of the things that we are looking at, how are coaches going to be able to communicate with their athletes? Is there more that you can do by just, instead of just having a phone conversation or a phone call? So we had our marketing team kind of look at what are some of those options that coaches could utilize and athletes can utilize to get that, two-way video chat. So where you can see your athletes, where you can talk to your athletes, where you do have more of that socialization, where athletes can see each other and talk to each other that way. The 4 options that we came up with and that we are recommending that coaches use is one is Zoom. Obviously, there's been a lot of Zoom calls, SOPA. Uh, we utilize Zoom all day long. Obviously, everyone is on a Zoom phone call right now, so you kind of understand how to utilize Zoom. The second option would be Skype, Facebook Messenger, and Microsoft Teams. If you're not familiar with those, and when we share this out, you'll have access to the links as well. We're also going to post this on our website, so you'll be able to go to the website and click on the links for each of those items. It'll explain how to set up a Zoom account, how to run a Zoom meeting, what are some of the features of Skype, how to use Facebook Messenger. So all that information will be available to you. Additionally, we are also creating like how-tos for our athletes, how to get a Zoom account, how to get a Skype account, how to log on. What are some of the features that go with Skype or Facebook Messenger? So again, these are like the 4 that we've looked at that we thought would be most convenient and accessible for coaches to use. So I encourage you to take a look around and set up your trainings with your athletes, through a Zoom or a Skype meeting. Pros and cons of each of the platforms that we're recommending are listed right there for you. Additionally, I think most of so since we've been focusing on Zoom and doing a lot of our meetings on Zoom, a lot of our athletes have been joining on Zoom, so that may be the best choice. But it's really, you have the flexibility as a coach is, what are you comfortable with, and what are your athletes comfortable with? So how do you engage those athletes in a virtual setting? Like, what can you do as a coach? What is the expectation? So really, schedule your trainings as normal, just like you would in person. Plan out your virtual trainings with your athletes. There's a sample training program that'll be listed within the sport-specific information, which we'll be going over in a little bit. So feel free to utilize those, make them specific to your sport, make them specific to your training. You want to acknowledge each athlete when they do come on board. Um, address them by name, welcome them, say, hello, Jim, how are you doing today? And talk to them, because, really Zoom and these platforms, we're not really used to training that way. So we want to acknowledge that athletes, when they do come on, that we acknowledge them. Ask questions that acknowledge that they are training at home, but also providing a sense of hope that this isn't going to go on forever, that eventually we will be back to training in person. You want to establish some team support. Set your normal expectations, just like you would at an in-person training. Don't allow your athletes to have phones or other devices that would distract them while they're supposed to be training. When someone is talking, be actively listening. Develop responses from the group to positively support their teammates. Celebrate every little thing. Be creative. Have fun with it. Just like you would in person, you want your athletes cheering each other on. When meeting virtually, try to include activities that engage the athletes and set them up for success. Many of our athletes are dealing with challenges away from Special Olympics, so it's okay to discuss some of those challenges during your trainings as well. Be proud of your athletes that, that they're getting through this time of crisis that we're all going through. Use this time to really focus on the skills, focus on skill development, especially for those team sports where we can't get together and play as a team. So you have this opportunity to really focus and develop the individual skills. So training the athletes through the virtual experience will take some creativity. One thing you could do, adjust your camera so that athletes can watch you model the skill. You can also have your athletes lead some of the skills, get that social interaction with your athletes. Keep up theirs as well as your fitness level. Lead your athletes through some of the drills and set goals for your athletes, set goals for yourselves. It's okay for the athletes to see you fail, just like anything in life. So you'll be able to set yourself up to keep up your fitness level as well. Like we mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that fitness is part of every session, really focusing on that fitness level. A lot of people are sitting around their houses right now. They're not being able to get back to work. Really, that we're not getting back to in-person training. So really focusing on fitness during this time is really going to be critical for our athletes. So make sure unfortunately they're at home, but take advantage of this time where you can connect with your athletes and really focus on that fitness. Set an example for your athletes. You're doing the same thing as they are. If they're out running, you're going to be out running. If you're going to be participating in bocce, let's do those drills with our athletes and show that we are doing this with them. And you also want to be coachable. There's nothing wrong with looking around and seeing what other coaches are doing and borrowing some of their ideas. Again, we have that coaches resource, the coaches Facebook page. So talk amongst yourselves on there, provide ideas. If you're having a question, how am I going to interact with my coach? Drop a question on there. It'd be awesome to see coaches communicating that way, sharing ideas, how to engage our athletes. Learn about some of these other platforms that are available. Again, like Zoom may not work for you. Microsoft Teams may not work for you, but there may be other avenues that you could explore that would be more conducive for you running your training. So I encourage you to be resourceful. We don't have all the answers. We've never done this before in this virtual setting. So it's going to take a lot of creativity for the coaches to engage our athletes. And I think most importantly, have fun. Take this opportunity to allow for some fun during your training, your athletes to come up with fun activities as well. So one thing I'd like to do is introduce to you Lisa Rajewski and Tom Delaney. who are LDRW coaches from Bucks County. Lisa and Tom have been doing some awesome things through their Facebook page as well as their Zoom meetings. I was fortunate enough to be invited to one of their Zoom calls the other night with their athlete. It was very engaging. There was a lot of athletes that were on that phone call. A lot of the feedback and the conversations on their Facebook page is very engaging. It seems like the athletes are really buying into it, what they're doing with their, as they call it, their Saturday morning long distance crew. So it's pretty awesome. I get the alerts, every so often when someone posts on that webpage, and just some of the stories that they are telling within that group is pretty amazing. So I'd really like Lisa, if you could, Tom, chime in anytime if you can. But we'll start off, and I'll bring up your Facebook page just to really show what that looks like. And if you can just talk to the group about what you did to set up your Facebook page, and just kind of talk to us about, how you engage your athletes. What are some of the things that you're doing through Facebook as well as Zoom?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
There you go.
We set up a closed Facebook group back in February when track began. Now, full disclosure, I do not own a laptop. I do not own a computer. So everything that I did was on my phone. So if I can do this on my phone, you guys can absolutely do this. We go under your settings. There's a link to click on group, create a group. You just name the group, you post a picture, and you're good to go. You invite your athletes in, and you have a privacy setting. So I have it so that you have to be in the group to see the comments on the group. The athletes are able now to invite other Special Olympics people in. We're trying to have, that's today's challenge. That's hysterical. Yeah. It's not always fitness. Today is just kind of entertaining. We started the Facebook group as a way to connect with the athletes and the parents, whether we were having an indoor or outdoor workout. I would post the workout at track that they did in case they missed it, if they had access to the track later in the week. Well, then COVID hit. And then it really became a place that we were engaging with the athletes, just even a silly joke, a silly meme, whatever it was, but it became apparent that they needed something a little bit more from us. So we decided one day to start a Zoom meeting, which was 40 minutes. Everyone hopped on. It was wonderful. As we were about to hang up, they asked if we could do it tomorrow. Tomorrow turned into 5 days a week at 1 p.m. And it really, it was a way for us to see their faces. It was a way for them to see our faces, and it was great. We have a wonderful volunteer by the name of Allison who started up our game nights. So now every Wednesday evening, we have a game night. So it changes weekly. It could be bingo. The theme of bingo is constantly changing. We've done Battleship, we've done Name That Tune, we've done Disney Trivia. Seriously, every week it's something new, and they absolutely love it. We're very fortunate in the fact that most of our athletes already had a Facebook, so it's easy for them to stay engaged. And we actually had an easier time with the athletes working Zoom than the parents working Zoom. So the athletes were actually teaching the parents how to get on there. So it's all very easy to do. It's very easy to stay engaged with them. As it became apparent that return to play was happening, but a lot of our athletes would not be able to do it, we started fitness challenges. So every day, my week runs Thursday to Tuesday, I host a fitness challenge. It could be all cardio, it could be just stretch. It was also a way to incorporate your Fit 5. So it could be, drink a certain amount of waters, have a healthy protein, walk for 20 minutes. What else? We're doing AMRAP, as many rounds as possible. I think some of the coaches really don't like me right now because they're sweating it out with them. I think Tom can attest to that.
A lot of work keeping up with it. We're starting looking at taking maybe videotaping our kids at the track practices that are not virtual. And so the kids can make it, can see what's going on, so they can be part of the practice and understand what we warm up will be and what exercise we expect. And to show them where the lines are, where we're going to be running, so they know where to start and where to finish at the park. So they can know where the time is, and then they can get back to Lisa about what's going on. It's a way of connecting to the parents and the kids and getting more kids involved in the county, involved in the track, and keeping them exercises, even if they can't be in person.
And as our county opened back up, a lot of our athletes started going back to work. So we've actually cut down our Zoom calls. We're now Mondays and Fridays, instead of 5 days a week, we're 2, and we kept our game night. So we're still contact with them 3 days a week. And then our fitness challenges, again, like I said, are daily. So they love it, and it's a good way. They're super competitive. So it's a great way for them to compete against each other. It's a great way, to stay engaged with them, to keep their fitness levels up, even if they can't come to practice in person. You can find tons of workouts. I have athletes reach out to me to ask for modifications to my workout. If they can't do jumping jacks, we'll find something else for them to do. There's tons of workouts on Pinterest. There's tons on YouTube, Google. I mean, you can find a ton. I write a workout every evening, and I schedule the post to post at 5 a.m. so that whenever they wake up in the morning, it's there waiting for them so they can work on it throughout the day. And then at the end of my week, I will delete all of the workouts so that there's no confusion to them, so that a fresh week, which for me will start tomorrow. We'll have a new fitness challenge start tomorrow, and then we'll carry on throughout the week.
The kids like that, the wheels where the kids' names are put on for every day you practice. You get to put your name on the wheel, and the more days you practice, the more your names are on. And then we give out prizes for kids that participate more. So the more you participate, the more chances you're getting a prize. And that motivates the kids to get their name on that.
Yeah. That's awesome motivation right there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to pull up one of your challenges, because they've been pretty cool too. You know what? You deleted some?
Yeah, because it's a new week for me.
Yeah.
I can tell you that tomorrow's workout, it's called AMRAP. So it's as many rounds as possible. Don't tell my athletes yet. I didn't tell them.
Okay.
Don't tell Tom. Shh, don't tell Tom. So in 20 minutes, they will have to tell me how many rounds that they do. And there's a series of about 5 or 6 exercises. So it'll be like 40 jumping jacks, 30 mountain climbers, 20 push-ups, 10 something, 5 burpees, and then however many of those you can get done in a round. So don't tell them. They're going to be very angry with me tomorrow.
We won't post this until tomorrow, so they won't know.
And at the same time, if there's a new exercise she brings in, she puts a videotape up so the kids understand how you do this exercise.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I kept it all very familiar. So it was basically everything that we do normally in our warm-ups. So reach for the skies, touch your toes, twists, all things that they were familiar with. And then we built upon it. So every few days, I would add something to it. So the other day we did inchworms, and I would post a short little video just explaining what that looks like. But again, you can find it on YouTube. You can find little 20-second videos or whatever that will help them visualize what they're supposed to be doing.
Cool. If anyone has any questions for either of the coaches, I would encourage you to drop them into the question and answer, because we can take some time to answer them at the end. Oh, you know what? I'll ask you this question while we're here, Lisa, real quick. How much time does it take? How much time does this take of your day?
Take of my day.
Yeah, how long does it take you to put together a workout or what you're posting on here?
So I would say probably, depending how intricate the workout is, probably anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, but just most of that is trying to find a video or something that I feel is good for them, that it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
you could easily post an entire week's worth of workouts and schedule it to post. Facebook allows you that option within the group, within a closed group. So I could actually do, if I spend an hour of time, schedule a whole week's worth of workouts and be done with it. But I like to do it daily because I like to read their feedback, and some things are hard for them to do. And then I know to not include that the next week or the next day. So it's time consuming, but you get out what you put into it. So I feel like it's easy to do, but there is some time constraint to it. The game nights, I think Allison creates these boards probably within, 20 minutes or so, and the athletes all help create the word bank. So everybody, like if the theme is vacation, they will all email and message her their favorite vacation places, and she'll put them all together on a word bank that looks gorgeous and professionally made. But you get out what you put into it. So it's absolutely worth it.
Awesome. Good advice. And I think you even did this on your vacation last week too, right? You're still posting. So your time as a coach never stops. So that's pretty awesome.
But it's, I have my son is on the LDR team, and he really was struggling. So he was really struggling to have his entire routine pulled out from under him. So I recognize how important it is to our athletes to have that normalcy. And so while the world is turned upside down with this is something that they can rely on and count on, that we're going to be there and that we're going to support them, and we're going to all get through this, as best as we can. It's a learning curve for all of us, but totally worth it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, that just, when Michelle started off the conversation today and some of the facts that were demonstrated from the athlete survey, I think you just kind of reiterated and kind of reinforced, how important this time is for our athletes. And, really the at home is where a majority of our athletes are going to be training is at home, and how vital and how important it is as coaches. And it just, I just want to say thank you for coming on this call. I mean, to learn about how to engage our athletes at home. So thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Melissa. They were able to provide us kind of two different ways about how we're engaging our athletes, whether it's what Melissa's doing through texting or cell phones or calling parents and emailing, or Lisa and Tom doing it through their Facebook page or through Google. So those are some really good advice from the coaches.
Bruce, we had one more question in the chat
cool.
for Lisa and Tom. What percentage of athletes are you reaching, you think, on your social media platforms?
Tom, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, it's between like 20 and 30 kids are coming, but they come and go all the time, the athletes. Some of them are working, so they can't make it all the time. And some weeks they're involved because it's the summertime, some are on vacation. So we try to get as many kids as possible. We keep sending information out to the kids. Athletes are reminding them what's going on. But it depends on the week because of the summertime. A lot of kids are coming, students are coming.
All right, thanks. I'd encourage you to keep continuing dropping questions into that Q&A, and we'll have time at the end to answer them. But for right now, we'll just continue with this presentation. So, we are also learning that, not all of our athletes have access to the computer or to the internet. Therefore, we created this guidance that will be that's also located on the webpage, which we'll show you that in a little bit. But for those athletes that do not have cell phones, like how can you communicate with them? And that's certainly a challenge, but we don't want to exclude them. We want to make sure that they are getting the resources necessary and still being able to participate and train at home. So you can mail resources to your athletes, create the training plans ahead of time that you can print out and mail to your athletes. You can mail the instructions for the competitions that we provided within the sport-specific guidance. You can work with your assistant coaches and the unified partners, again, keeping them engaged to help getting the printed materials to those athletes. that don't have access to the computer or the internet. People still have their home phones, contacting the athletes through their home phone, whether it's speaking to them directly or speaking to their caregivers. You can have socially distant visits to get that printed material to the athletes. Again, work with your assistant coaches and the unified partners to get that printed materials to those athletes. Work with the athletes and the caregivers to have a central packet pickup. Make arrangements to meet somewhere to get the printed material. But if you are going to do that, you want to make sure that you are following you're utilizing the PPE, you're following the social distance guidelines, especially with staying a minimum of 6 feet away from each other, as well as wearing a mask at all times around the athletes. We want to reinforce that none of these materials should be shared with one another, meaning that if you hand me the printed material, I'm not going to hand it back to you, or I'm not going to hand it to another athlete. Because again, during this time, there is no sharing of equipment. So you want to make sure that you're following those guidelines as well. So what can you do with athletes that do have cell phones? Obviously, what Melissa said earlier, she contacts the athletes on their phones. So call the athletes weekly with the practice plan. What is your expectations of the athletes for the week? You want to be cognizant of the athlete's phone plan so that they don't incur additional charges. If you do have a smartphone, there is a conference call function on your phone that you can communicate with more than one person at a time. So that may be a good way to engage your athletes and having more than one athlete on a phone call. Again, you can have conference calls. There are some free conference call lines that you can use. There's the freeconferencecall.com. There's Google Meet. Again, you can use Zoom. Just like Tom and Lisa went over, utilization of these social media platforms. If they have a smartphone, they'll be able to, like Lisa said, she doesn't have a computer or a tablet. She does everything from her phone. And you saw how engaging she was able to be using Facebook. So just be aware that there are some of their social media platforms out there. There's the WhatsApp, Facebook, Google. Again, like Lisa just went over, creating a closed Facebook group for your athletes. Text messaging, you can use text messaging to send practice plans to athletes. One thing that, I've learned when investigating some of this is you want to include like the plain text the information to the athletes rather than sending an attachment, because the athletes could incur some charges if you send a PDF through a text messages. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of how to engage the athletes that don't have access to a computer. Again, it's going to be very important to make sure that we are still connecting with those athletes. Now to give you some examples of what virtual competition will look like this fall, what are some of the expectations, and how are we going to pull this off in the fall? So I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about virtual competitions.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Yeah, we're excited. Virtual summer games was awesome, but it was more of a participation situation. So moving into the fall, we wanted to give some more meaningful competition-focused opportunities. We did that with the B and C plan, which I know a lot of you guys checked in on. But we wanted to make sure we offered up something for phase A. So we wanted to again just reiterate the definition of virtual competition. So for our fall sectionals, for fall festival, we won't be getting together on campus at DeSales, Slippery Rock, or Villanova, but we are going to still have those competitions, legitimate awarding competitions. So for the sectionals, they will be on or around October 23rd. We are working on developing the content for that day. We may spill over, either onto the Friday or onto the Sunday with just our presentations. We're still working on the scheduling for that, but our fall festival will be November 6th through 8th. Again, Villanova, the committees are hard at work for all of the sectionals and Villanova to make sure we have a meaningful event for our athletes. All of the events will include an opening ceremonies, competition highlights, award ceremonies, which is a unique challenge because we haven't done that virtually yet. But it's one that the committees are really taking on aggressively. We'll have healthy athletes. We'll have Olympic Village activities. And for Fall Festival, we will have a victory dance. Much like with virtual summer games, this information and everything that we're producing will be available on Facebook or YouTube. We're still, again, working on ironing out all the details and drilling down, but we'll make sure it is available for everybody. You won't need a Facebook account to be able to view it if it's on Facebook. And then YouTube, as we know, is a free resource for everybody. One of the things that we'll do a little bit differently is a couple days or a week or so prior to the event, we'll have a call, another webinar, a lot like we would previously when we were in person with our events, that we'll schedule. We'll provide you guys a schedule, provide you guys the idea or the knowledge with how you actually access the content. So again, we're working out the details of scheduling, but for example, for the sectional, during our awards and competition highlights, we'll probably break it up. So we'll schedule out the Western competition highlights and awards will be at a certain time. The Central will be at a certain time. The East will be at a certain time. So you guys will be able to tune in, and not have to sit through 4 hours of awards to see your athletes. Kind of to that end though, and same thing with virtual summer games, to produce what we have in our minds, we'll need content. So a lot like the athletes and coaches did running up to virtual summer games for our virtual sectionals and virtual Fall Fest. As your athletes are training, as you're working with them, encourage pictures, videos, any kind of content that we can amass to really, highlight the athletes at this sectional and at Fall Festival. That's really going to be the key to producing a really quality product like we did for virtual summer games and sports camp. One of the new things, and I think a lot of you guys were on the Phase B and Phase C calls, the coaches honor code. We've also created an athletes honor code. It's a little verbally, we tried to tone it down a little bit. We wrote it a lot in the first person for the athletes. So, I want to go through it bit by bit, but, it's talking about, I will only use one attempt and I will follow the sport competition rules, because you guys will be coaching them and checking in on them. But when they are actually competing, there's a chance that they're not going to be on a Zoom or on a FaceTime or whatever it is, competing. So we're asking the athletes to, that they will follow this honor code a lot like the coaches will. The big one for the honor code that we've discussed ad nauseum on these calls, and we will continue to beat until the horse's bones are dust, is making sure that the athletes are competing on the same course, field, court, equipment, whatever it is, for their qualifying scores, which we'll get into in a minute, as well as their final scores. One that we talked about, and I use the LDR example a lot, and people might have gotten sick of that. So for bocce, for example, if your athlete is practicing bocce at home and they do their qualifying score on asphalt, because that's the only surface they have, and then for their final scores, they go and they do it on a neighbor's grass yard, the scores are going to be completely different. So we want to make sure all of these scores, we're comparing apples to apples when these scores come in. So, the athletes are using the same surface for bocce, soccer, whatever it might be, the same course for LDR. We just want to make sure that these scores that are coming in, they're legitimate scores. We will have what we're calling the Virtual Competition Review Committee. It will consist of the sport and the competition staff from SOPA. We're also going to reach out to a couple of local coaches. If something comes across our table when we're getting the data in that throws up a big red flag, we're going to reach out to this virtual competition committee, going to discuss it. We'll probably reach back out to you guys as coaches and just be like, is this really legitimate? Like, is this an honest score, or are we going to have to, make some adjustments into the competition? So let's not cross that bridge. But Both of these are going to be available on our website. They'll be available on this presentation when we send it out tomorrow, so we don't ruin Lisa's surprise. So as far as the registration process goes itself, we're trying to keep things as normal as humanly possible. So, you guys have your process that we've worked on, that we've done over the last couple of years. We're still going to use the VSIS roster. So your sport and competition director, or if you're lucky enough to do it, you'll go on and you'll still activate all of your athletes, unified partners, coaches that are going to be involved in the sectional in VSIS. We will download that on our end, populate the Google registration sheets that we've utilized for the past couple of years, and we will send those out. You guys will populate those accordingly. So for all of the events that we've made some adjustments to, that Michelle is going to go over in a little bit, all of that is going to be reflected on the Google Sheets, and so you guys will fill all that information in. The change is going to be how we're going to receive final scores. I'm still finalizing that format. It will be another Google Sheets online version. I just don't know exactly 100% what the format's going to look like, because there's going to be some things are going to be a little bit different for Bocce in particular. So the format, we'll finalize that, but it'll be, you guys will send in the scores again via the Google Sheets. I'll work with the competition committee across our sectional layout, and we will produce final results. So the deadlines, we moved things a little bit with Labor Day weekend coming up, and everybody's kind of getting off the ground a little bit. We pushed those initial registration dates back a week. So VSIS rosters are going to be due on September 14th, and registration will be due on the 17th. We do have to keep the final score deadline as September 27th. This is all for the sectionals. Fall Fest reflects a similar timeline as far as getting data in for those competitions. So for scoring, kind of like I mentioned, so the athlete will conduct their competitions at home. Hopefully they have a parent, a guardian around, a friend, somebody that can help them if they have to measure something, if they have to time something out. But so they'll do that. They will do their at-home training, competitions. They will allow, we've got some allowances for modifications. There's some, Michelle goes into those a bit. We've got some guidebooks that we've produced, a lot like for B and C phases. We've produced them for A, allowing for modifications. For example, in our team events, we're doing all skills. So for soccer, we've got a, I believe we referred to it as an entry level and an advanced level skill. So we've got 3 in each of those categories. Athletes may not have a goal for shooting. So, we outline in those guidebooks different ways you can work around it. Getting a fence and tying some string around a fence to represent a goal, putting chalk on a wall, setting up garbage cans, and having a helper there to make sure they're not kicking it 20 feet over the goal so it counts. So there's some modifications that we are allowing and that, we expect, because not everybody's going to be in a perfect world for these at-home competitions. Similarly, there's 3 levels of skills on each side for each sport. Athletes will be able to enter 1, 2, or 3. They're going to be awarded individually by event, not as a level 1 skills. It'll be, the 10-meter dribble, that's going to be awarded. The shooting, that's going to be awarded. So we're making some adjustments to modify things around what the athletes have available. Like I said, qualifying scores will be submitted by the coaches. Probably go to your sport and competition director, whoever fills out that Google sheet, and then it'll be sent to us for divisioning. Final scores will run that same gamut, go up to the sport and competition director, whoever is managing your data, then onto the competition team. We will plug that into GMS and have final placements from there. Again, we're asking everybody to follow the honor code. Final scores will not always be as good or better than entry scores. Sometimes they'll be better, sometimes they'll be worse. But we're gonna take a look at all those scores that come in, and like I said, any red flags that pop up, we'll follow up with the coaches as needed on those. We are, after all of this, going to end up awarding and sending out, our awards, our Special Olympics sectional state level awards, our 50th, hopefully, anniversary awards for Fall Fest. So after the event's done, the awards committee is going to get together. We're going to mail the awards out to the local program managers, who will disseminate it down to the coaches, and then you guys can get it out to your athletes and celebrate and have a good time. So for divisioning, one of the things that we are going to do, we are going to separate for athletes that are training in person. So athletes that are in phase B and phase C are going to be in their own divisions. Athletes who are at home, we are going to put them in their own divisions as well. So if an athlete is competing in phase A, we are going to have them divisioned against other athletes that are competing in phase A. Same with the B and C athletes. They're only going to compete against the B and C just because there's a couple of those modifications that might have to occur for those at-home athletes. And we want to make sure it's a level playing field and that scores are compared appropriately. Outside of that, there'll be standard divisioning process. We're going to go ability, age, gender, make sure the athletes are competing against athletes of similar abilities. For the sectionals, we will hold them all on one day, but all of the West athletes will be divisioned together against each other. All the Central will be divisioned against each other, and all the East. We're not going to cross-contaminate the sections of the state for the sectional. It'll be divisioned traditionally like it will be. Same thing with Fall Fest. We will division across the state for that because it is the state level event, even though we'll be competing at home virtually. All right, I think this is still me. I think it's my last one. So sports offered, like I mentioned, we'll actually start over here on your right-hand side. So no significant changes necessarily are going to be made to LDRW. We're going to offer all of our standard events. Speed roller skating, we're going to offer the 1, the 2, and the 300. They can be done with or without skates. Again, we'll have separate divisions for all of that. Bocce, we've got a modified game. It's going to be a 4-frame game where the athletes will roll the ball at their palina. They'll put their score down. They'll measure it out, put their score down, and then we'll enter that into, they'll be divisioned and they'll be compared. Those scores will be compared against the athletes in their division. Michelle's got a little bit more of that down the line, but we'll be playing a modified bocce game. And then for team sports, flag football, volleyball, soccer, level 1 and 2 individual skills, so entry level and advanced individual skills. Same thing for artistic roller skating. They've come up with an entry and an advanced level 1 and a level 2 skills competition. And then for powerlifting in phase A, Ron and the gang have done the same. They've come up with a level 1 entry and a level 2 advanced competition for the powerlifters. So we've been hard at work trying to make sure we can get our phase A athletes competing.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Mike stole my thunder a little bit, but that's okay. It'll make us roll through this a little bit faster. So just wanted to answer 2 of the questions that came in reference directly to events. So is there a limit on the number of athletes we can send to sectionals? No, there's not. So there are no allocations being provided or accepted, so there's not an LOI process as there typically has been in the past. We welcome all athletes who want to participate in these virtual events to join us for that. Another question that came in reference to events was, must an athlete compete in sectionals in order to compete in Fall Fest? So again, the answer is no. We really want to just encourage as much participation as possible, when it's convenient for people. So again, I'm hoping that you can all get things up and running. There's a lot more at-home training happening than we may have anticipated 2 or 3 months ago. So, just hoping that you guys can get this up and running in time for sectionals. If you're not able to do that, please just get up and running whenever you can, and all of those individuals can participate in Fall Fest. So trying to be kind of as flexible and as open as possible for everyone. So just going into this sport-specific guidance a bit. Yeah, so thanks. Bruce pulled up the website. So this is the link directly to the COVID-19 protocols page on our website. So Bruce, if you can just scroll down and you'll see I mean, we've just added that kind of chart. We're updating this page almost on a daily basis. That's the chart of kind of a lot of the upcoming webinars. And then if you can go down and just click on the coaches tab, Bruce, with important documents. Yep, so you see resources for coaches right there. So the first piece here is the in-person training. So those are all of our phase B and C guides that Mike had referenced earlier. So that is if you're conducting in-person training. Under that is some of the relevant information there. And then if you keep scrolling down, we've just added all the resources for at-home training as well, with some of the relevant kind of links. This is where we will add this training recording, this PowerPoint. So again, everything that we start to produce that's relevant for at-home training will go here on this page. So super important, bookmark it, but that's the best place to go to access all of the most up-to-date information. So Bruce, if you can just real quick pull up that flag football guide. Mike had referenced some modifications for bocce a little bit, or for soccer a little bit. So if you can just go down to the modifications, just so we can show a little bit some of those things that we've outlined. So we have updated all of this to reflect kind of things happening during phase A. So you'll see here under kind of recommended and substitute equipment. I'll get to on the next slide, just kind of equipment requirements. But within each of these guides, we've put, you know, just some different things that can be utilized for each of these different things. So cones, you know, water bottles, shoes, I mean, really anything you have within your house that can stand up can be utilized as a cone, right? Timing devices, you know, looking at things like a kitchen timer maybe, I mean, a phone, a wrist, a stopwatch, you know, any of those things is good. But just trying to come up with a lot of ideas of different ways and different environments that athletes can utilize to do each of these sports. So each guide is very specific to the activities within that guide or the things that, you know, are being called attention to within that guide. So again, for your particular sports, we would just really highly recommend that you go through that. I think definitely even something that's worth sharing out with your athletes electronically with some of those who may have access to that. If not, as Bruce alluded to earlier, maybe mailing some of these resources out to those individuals. And then Bruce, if you can just scroll down to the entry forms at the kind of towards the end here, right at the beginning of the appendix. So we've also included this kind of data collection form. So these are the two for flag football. But these are the ones that your athletes can be utilizing as they're doing each of their event exercises. We've also included within here for the team sports, as you can see kind of at the bottom, they can track week by week, you know, so if they're trying to conduct these things week by week and see their improvement, we've kind of added a slot on there for them to kind of track what that improvement looks like as well. That is not necessary. Again, just something that we had thrown on there. We would need them doing these events at least prior to submitting qualifying scores and then prior to submitting their final scores. And any additional resources, you know, as you all start to go through this, that would be helpful. You know, if you find yourself creating stuff, if you can please just let us know, because if you find yourself doing it, other people could probably benefit from it as well. So we're all kind of navigating through this together. We're learning kind of what works best and, you know, how we can best be supporting you. So we'll continue to do that, but your feedback is very welcome. So we encourage you to reach out. All right, if you want to pop back over. And he's just kind of, that's the appendix. So again, we have a lot of the resources that we've talked about here today in the appendix as well. So these are the direct links to all those guides. Again, they will just link you directly to each of those things up on our website, but easy access once you have the presentation. If you just want to go down to the next one, Bruce. So as far as equipment is concerned, so again, Mike talked a little bit to this, but we felt in this atmosphere, it's really important for our athletes to have the necessary equipment that they need to participate in at-home training and competition. So it's important now, and we had sent out some guidance a few weeks ago, but that you're contacting your athletes who plan on participating just to find out what they have. Keep track of these things, kind of develop the list of what the needs are, and then working with your local program to see what do they have in inventory that can be used. So you typically know how many of each resource you get for a training session per year. And maybe you have those in your garage, maybe your local program has those in storage somewhere, you know, but what do you already have that can be utilized and shared with the athletes? These items would all be loaned to them for the season and should be returned at the completion of the season. If your program doesn't have items in stock, some options are either purchasing them. So if there is kind of a budget allowable for you to do that, you could go ahead and purchase some of those items. Again, just making sure that you're getting any permission necessary from your local program management team to purchase any of those items. And if that's not possible and you still find yourself kind of in need, we want to help. So we're willing to loan out the equipment that we have. So we have, a decent amount of equipment in each section of the state that we utilize for our sectional events. And so we've put together this kind of equipment form. So if you have a need, we just ask that you complete this form. The sooner the better. So we're asking you to complete it by August 31st, just so we can get equipment out to you after that. But if you still have a need after that, please go ahead and fill out the form. We'll only be able to mail probably on a weekly basis because we'll have to have staff go out to those storage units, which aren't super close to, where any of us necessarily live. So we'll probably make that trip once a week to grab the stuff that you need and then head to the post office to mail it out. But we want to be able to accommodate any of those needs that you have. So, and then we will send those things directly to the coaches. And once you receive them, you'll just need to schedule or arrange kind of a pickup or a drop off. Just important to make sure that everything is disinfected kind of prior to, handing it off to someone else. And then all those items will need to be collected and returned, again, whether to us or whether to your local program at the end of that fall season. We'll provide you with kind of the mailing information. I mean, we wouldn't expect this to be coming kind of out of your pocket. So the programs who get into that, we'll be sure to share all that information with you. We'll send some more detailed information on this in the follow-up email, but there'll need to be a charge for equipment that either isn't returned or is damaged or things like that. So we'll put all that together just so you're fully aware of kind of, what you're accepting kind of from us through that loaner program. So if you want to go back over and then just so some of the specific needs, and again, it's really just for a few sports, but for flag football, they would need to have a football, a tape measure, a timer, and tape measures can really differ too. I mean, I think a lot of households have kind of a typical, 25-foot tape measure or something like that within their house. It can be a sewing tape measure, one of kind of the flexible ones. Really anything that they may have available is suitable. So soccer, the same, just need a soccer ball of the appropriate size as well as a tape measure and a timer. Volleyball is just a volleyball. And then bocce is kind of the tricky one. So most people probably don't have bocce balls. So that's something I see a great need for coaches needing to supply that equipment. But how we're going to manage it is just one bocce ball per person. Again, I think anything beyond that would put most programs beyond their means and probably beyond the means of what we have in our storage units to be able to provide as well. So we've made modifications for this to work with just one bocce ball and then, of course, a tape measure. You want to go to the next one, Bruce? So just talking about some of the sport adaptations. And again, just important to remember, these are the events for competition, right? So important to just make sure, as we had talked about earlier, that in each of your training sessions per week, that important for you to incorporate fitness, health education, and also working on developing these skills or kind of other skills that will help your athletes improve overall for their sport. These just list, again, some of the different levels. So as Mike said, we've got an entry level, level 1, and an advanced level, level 2 for each of the sports. Athletes need to compete in one of the levels. They cannot cross over levels. And awards will be given for each individual event that they participate in. So the max events that someone in one of these sports could participate in is 3 events. They'll each be scored and medaled individually. So if you have an athlete that can't do one of them for whatever reason, that's okay. They can do the other 2 and they'll be placed and awarded based on their participation in those 2 events. So that is different than kind of individual skills are managed, if you're familiar with that, where those are compiled scores. But again, we just wanted to make sure we're as flexible and just able to accommodate as many athletes as possible. You want to go to the next one? So similar for roller skating, split into level 1 and level 2. As Mike had said, there are several different categories for roller skating. So we list events with no skates, so just doing these things on sneakers. That would probably be the position that most of our athletes who are training at home are in, but some of them may be willing to put on their skates and get out there and actually do these things. But so the same kind of for artistic and speed, and we'll make sure that we're collecting that information on the entry forms. We know if they're on quad or inlines, and on, skates or no skates. So we can go to the next one. Bocce, we wanted to dive into a little bit. So again, all of the other sports that we've just referenced, I think, are pretty self-explanatory, kind of in line with how those sports are typically managed or skills that are typically performed within their sport. Bocce is a little bit different, and Mike talked a little bit to it earlier. We've tried to as clearly express this as possible within that phase aid guide. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or one of the competition staff. But as we said, each individual will have one ball. They'll place that 30 feet from a foul line, so they'll make a foul line. They'll place the polina, or an object that represents the polina. So again, we give some examples of it can be a golf ball, a tennis ball, a baseball, maybe an orange or an apple, things of just a similar shape and similar size to the actual polina itself. And they will take their bocce ball and they'll roll it from the foul line as close to the polina as they can, and they'll submit a measurement. And they will do that enough times, kind of depending on the event that they're participating in, whether it's singles, doubles, or unified doubles, to reach the number of games that they need. So a person will roll 4 balls, and that will equal 1 frame. So typical to kind of how bocce works, right? There are 4 balls out there. They get measured kind of against other people's balls towards the polina. They will play, each game will have 4 frames. And then for singles, each athlete will play 3 games. For doubles, each athlete will play 3 games, but they'll only complete 2 frames per game. So they can be kind of paired up with their double partner to equal that 1 game. And then the same for unified doubles. They'll play 3 games, but will each complete 2 frames within those games. I'm going to go to the next one, Bruce. Sorry, my 3-year-old is banging on the door. I'm sure you can. This is an example of the bocce single score sheet. So again, just how it's laid out. You got game 1, game 2, game 3, and then the frames and the balls for each of those as well. All of our athletes will be divisioned in either divisions of 3 or 4. And we will schedule them just like we would schedule them at a competition. So Mike will work his magic in kind of putting together divisions and, brackets within those divisions, just like we would schedule out a normal competition. And then we'll take the scores that they've put in and we'll compare. So this athlete's frame 1 of game 1 to this athlete's frame 1 of game 1. And then kind of just continue to work through that process, just like we're there in person. We will have our committees to help with this. It is for sure going to be a lot of work. It's not something that GMS will automatically do for us. So we're grateful for their help, but we felt like that was kind of the fairest way to keep kind of, the norm of what bocce typically is. So I think that's it on bocce. For powerlifting, this one was a little bit tricky, and we worked a lot with Ron Lobb, who really is our sport director. He sits on our sport management team across the state and really is kind of our expert in powerlifting, to try to come up with what could some of these different at-home models be. And, one of the biggest concerns here was just safety. So if athletes have access to weights even within their home, we don't know that there are people within their home that can help spot them or that can help just make sure that they're lifting properly and that they're being as safe as they possibly can in a competition environment. So we decided to go away from that. These will be the allowable at-home training competition skills for powerlifting. And the thought process behind this is, again, a lot of powerlifting is strength, right? I mean, core strength, body strength, upper body, lower body. So just putting together some fitness exercises that would mimic those things and help the athletes just build up their capacity so they can, once we can get back to powerlifting, that they haven't lost a whole lot of the skills that they had prior to. So these will be the skills for that. And again, all outlined and kind of further explained. There are pictures and I think video links within the Phase A guide for each of these activities as well. And then the last, and Melissa did a great job in talking to this earlier, just some of the adaptations that can be made for LDR. And I really think she hit almost every single one that we have on here. So no change to events. All the events will be exactly the same. And just some different ideas for measuring distances. So a lot of local trails are marked with distances. So I think that could help some individuals. Utilizing a GPS device like she had talked about, a lot of phones have them on it. If you've got a Garmin watch or something like that, those are great. One of the other ideas is, driving, if you're running streets or something like that, driving around in a car and just tracking that on the odometer in your car to try to pace out the distance that you should be going. Utilizing your usual training course. So again, that was one of the things that both her and Lisa mentioned, just allowing, although they can't be there in person with the group, they can go out to that course kind of on their own and run that usual course that they would typically run. And also utilizing a track. So, those things can be pretty easily marked out on a track. And some adaptations are a treadmill. So again, Melissa hit right on point with all those things. So good job. The last one here that we've got is really communication is key in this whole thing, right? So I know I had kind of alluded to, please give us feedback. We want to be here to help. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. We want to be the best support that we can be for you. So it's really our goal, even as we continue to work through this process, to develop as much engaging programming, as much content as we can to help you all through this. I had just thought about, even as we went through this, I know Lisa had said, you can get lots of fitness activities on Pinterest and things like that. Maybe we can help to produce some of those things. Here's a 10-minute fitness workout that you can incorporate into your practice. It's really, if you're on a Zoom session, you literally hit play. So anything like that, if you have ideas of things that we can help do so you don't all have to be doing them individually, we're more than happy to do that. I think I would also encourage all of you to utilize our coach Facebook page. So SOPA Coaches on Facebook, similar to Lisa's group, it's a closed group. In order to become part of it, you just have to search it, again, SOPA Coaches, answer 2 questions: what sport do you coach, what county do you coach in? And then it's really an open forum. So I would encourage people to throw some things up there that you are doing, share resources, share best practices. Because, as everyone says now, we're all in this together, but we really truly are. And there's no need to kind of be replicating work, 500 times over if we can just help each other through this process. In order for us to kind of have a better idea of who's training at home, we've developed this at-home roster. Your field directors will send out a link before the end of this week. It'll go to the managers and sport and competition coordinators. Just want to emphasize this is different than event registration. So we're just trying to collect, kind of compile all of the coaches and all of the sites who will be conducting at-home training. Again, so we can just better communicate with you. So here's just an example of what that'll look like. There'll be a directions tab, kind of a tab that outlines some of the at-home guidance, a lot of what we've talked about today, all of which is included in each of the Phase A guides. And then you'll just need to look for and they'll be separated by East, West, Central, and then the Greater Lehigh Valley and Pocono region. So you just need to look for your county at the bottom. And then again, we just ask that you're filling in sport, coach's name, coach's email, which will allow us to kind of connect with those people as we develop or roll out content. anticipated start date, anticipated number of athletes. If you don't know these things, not the end of the world. But if you do, if you could kind of just fill those in, take some good estimates. And then again, like, are you interested in competing in sectionals and Fall Fest? It'll just help give us a better kind of understanding and estimate of the number of folks that we can expect to be participating in some of those events. So would greatly appreciate a job that we see kind of falling on the sport and competition coordinator. I would imagine this is something you're all going to be trying to track already. So for any coaches on this call, just really important that you're reaching out to either your manager and your sport and competition coordinator and letting them know that, you know, you're getting on board and you're interested in doing these things. All right, and I will pass it over to Jen to talk a little bit about some other options that we have come down the pipe this fall. Jen, are you on? You might be on mute.
That I am.
All right, there you go.
Everyone, and as you know, they always say we're going to save the best for last. So we are saving. They saved the fitness heptathlon for it. So coming later this fall, this will be a opportunity for all athletes and partners as well. So if Bruce, I think you've got the controls. Would you switch pages for me? So let me just give you some basics. The goal of this is to provide fitness opportunities for all athletes. And I was excited to hear what everybody's been saying about fitness being really important. And here's something that you can do and take. It's going to be turnkey. So when you get the materials, you'll be ready to go. It's going to be considered a sport. Okay, even if the athletes and partners are participating in one of the phase A, B, or C sports, they are still going to be able to participate in the heptathlon. And these activities will be able to be conducted at home, or they can be in-person trainings also. We'll have different opportunities for the heptathlon. Athletes will be able to be competing as a single, a double, a unified double, a 4-person team, or a 4-person unified team. So once we have that decision made, you'll see that we will be doing something different with our divisioning. So instead of divisioning our athletes with age, gender, and ability, we're actually doing age, gender, and percentage of improvement. Okay, so what will happen is we will train twice a week, and we will also be having the sectional and the state competitions. So how it will work is there will be a menu of events, and each participant will be able to pick 7 events from the heptathlon menu. So if we go to the next page, you'll see some options here. So the event menu will include things like the 10-yard run, walk, and roll, Roman holds, planks, seated jumping jacks, burpees, seated lateral bends, the 5-10-5, standing long jump, assistant sit to stand burpees, modified chair sit-ups, line jump sides to sides, squats, ball taps, wheelchair, push-ups, power punches, and jumping jacks. You might be looking at some of those and are saying, wow, I'm not quite sure what a 5-10-5 is or a Roman hold. And that's not to worry. Okay, we are going to come up with resources for you. They will have videos of how to do them, word explanations, everything that you need. So you will pick, the athlete or the partner will pick 7 of those events. They will have a assessment the first week to see how well they can do these. There'll be a listing of how everything is measured for you, and we'll submit the scores for their assessments. Couple weeks into the program, again, 8 to 10 weeks program, just like our normal sport training, they will do their assessments a second time, and that's when we will figure out their percentage of improvement. They will receive a score that will equal their percentage of improvement. and the scores will be added together, and that's how they will be divisioned. So we will have these step-by-step training guides. They will be created for the coaches by Special Olympics Pennsylvania, and they will have the weekly trainings in. So each training is about 60 minutes. It will include a warm-up, a cool-down, exercises that can be done to help improve their fitness, as well as some Fit For information to be gone over. The Heptathlon event guide is being created by Special Olympics North America. And what's cool about it is there will be printable one-pages. So if you do have those athletes who aren't able to join by a Zoom meeting or have email, things like that, to get their information, you'll be able to print the one-pagers for them, and that will be everything they need. We'll have video demonstrations, and then of course we will also have coaches training webinars that will be offered by the training department. So we have a couple incentives for this program, and as we heard earlier, that the athletes are very competitive, and we understand that. So of course we'll have this competition, and they will receive Special Olympic medals. There's little to no equipment required. Everybody will be able to engage existing volunteers in a meaningful way. We'll engage new unified partners and donors with the unified teams. We'll encourage fitness during this time and the opportunity to engage all athletes regardless of their health status. So even the athletes and coaches who are in the high risk category will be able to participate in our fitness heptathlon. So that will be coming out soon. We'll have all that material for you. The second item coming out will be Fitness Strides, which will be a national distance challenge. So you may remember that we had done a Strides challenge with the athletes before going to Seattle, Washington. This will be run on the same way. It will be an 8 to 10 week national challenge coming in October. It will be open to everyone. Each individual or team chooses their challenge distance. The data will be collected through your favorite tracking device or paper and uploaded into Strava. This is a free application. It will track their miles that they have been running. There'll be a national leaderboard will be available online to track people's progress. You can challenge other teams, counties, regions, or states. So Pennsylvania could take on Ohio, or we could take on California. So we can do it by state. We'll be able to do it by regions. So it'll be a lot of fun to be able to see how our athletes are doing and our partners compared to other states, and put out some challenges. There'll be specific details that will be shared in September. And I just saw that a note popped up that says Strava no longer allows the athletes to enter their scores for free. But remember, we'll be going through the application through our international office. Our Special Olympics North America office. So they have some special rights and are dealing with that right now as we speak to make it work for all of us. Okay, so the level of the challenges that will be available, you'll be able to register for a challenge. So if you remember, 8 to 10 weeks. So it's 25 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, 150 miles, or 150 plus miles. So those are the levels that will be available, and we'll be putting out the information as soon as it is ready, and then Special Olympics North America will give us the go for the race and see how we can do with our miles across the state. So that is it for me. If you have any other questions, I'd love to take them. And again, this will be coming forth later this fall. And I hope that we can count on you and all your coaches to join us in our new sport of fitness.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Yep.
I'm just going to go through some of the questions that were dropped in the question and answer. Christy asks, the social distance visits are okay with athletes training at home, like one-on-one training. So when we were referring to the social distancing, the visits at home, it was essentially to drop off the printed materials so the athletes that are at home can get that information. So it's not necessarily one-on-one training where you're meeting with your athlete once a week. It's more of, just to get the athletes the materials that they need. We don't want to make it an occurrence that's happening on a weekly basis. But it's, like I said, it's just really to get those athletes those materials that they need. And potentially if they need some further explanation or demonstrations, and that is really your last resort for those athletes, then make sure that you are following the social distance protocols. But again, the athletes that are at home, whether they're at high risk or choose to be home, we still need to follow those guidelines. So make sure if you are doing those visits, that you do follow the proper PPE. But no, not for one-on-one training. Christy, if you need a follow-up, you can type that into the question or answer if you need more follow-up. Michelle, can an athlete training at home for powerlifting if they have all the equipment?
Yep. So I think we alluded to this a little bit when we talked about powerlifting. So, want to be sure that the environments are safe. So, Anne, I think in your specific case, I do believe you're a powerlifting coach. I know Chloe is a lifter. If you were interested in setting up kind of your site as a in-person training site, it would just be important that no one within that household who's going to be participating is a high-risk individual. If they are, they're not allowed to participate in that in-person training. But we would ask, if you're looking to have her participate like it would be an in-person event, that you're following all of the in-person training protocols. So you would need to complete that site advancement form, have a COVID-19 coordinator, do all of the proper protocols. So again, I think those are kind of the separations of that. And if you have any additional questions kind of for that specific situation, Anne, please feel free to follow up.
Okay, and Kathy has a question. Do we as coaches choose whether an athlete does level 1 or level 2? Kathy, I think that's a conversation that you have with your athlete, which level that they should be competing in to perform their best. So I think, you'd be able to have that conversation with your athlete. Second, part 2 to that question is, can an athlete do a level 1 skill and level 2 skill? No, the athlete would not be allowed to do a level 1 skill and a level 2. So if they're competing in a level 1 skill, they're competing all 3 in level 1 skill. Again, if they're doing a level 2 skill, they must compete within those 3 level 2 skills.
Just want to note in here too, Alice Moat, thank you, had dropped in, I think, a good recommendation for calculating distance. So she had said Google Maps will help you do that between a set of points. So that might be potentially another way you can go in and just track, what your course might be via Google Maps, and it can give you those distances as well. She also noted that with people with iPhones, the Health app is calculating your steps and distance, even if you've never opened it before. So as always, your technology is watching you, right? So thanks for sharing those additional things, Alice.
Okay.
I think we've answered all the questions that have been typed in at this time. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop those into either the chat or the Q&A. John had just asked, when will the documentation be available online? So as you saw, a lot of the Phase A guides and guidances are already there. We will be posting this recording and this PowerPoint up tomorrow morning. and again, then any other relevant resources to follow. So this stuff will all be emailed directly out to the sport and competition coordinators and managers, but will be available for everyone on that COVID-19 portion of the Special Olympics Pennsylvania website.
Okay, if anyone has any additional questions, I please encourage you to drop them in the question and answers. Our team will be staying on for we'll stay on until we answer all of your questions. But that is it for our presentation tonight. Michelle, just to reiterate, we will be sending this around tomorrow to the sport and comp directors. Again, it'll be posted on the COVID-19 website for you guys to view. So again, I just want to thank you. Like we've heard throughout this, it's a very important time for us to make sure that we're engaging these athletes that are at home. So I really hope this was valuable for you. And just to reiterate, again, if there are any questions, any clarifications that are needed, please, again, feel free to reach out to any one of us. So if there's nothing else, have a great night, everyone, and our team will stick around if there's any other questions. Thank you. We're getting thank you, so that's a good sign. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. All right. There we go. I couldn't pull it up.
It just said thanks for the thanks.
Oh, okay. I couldn't pull it up.
Just another thank you.
All right, gang, I think we are good to wrap.
Yeah, I was going
Yep.
to say, it looks like it's just us that are remaining on here. So, all right, everyone.
Cool.
Everybody else fell asleep, so.
Appreciate you guys hopping on.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Take care.